Welcome to the Paddock, a wee plot of land in the far north of Scotland that myself, Kim, and husband Del bought in 2023. At the time, the only home we'd ever owned was our tent. But all that was about to change, with our decision to swap nomad life for a tiny house in the Scottish Highlands. In the first 6 months of our journey, we'd found a wonderful company to build our home, bought the land on which to site it, and thrown all our ideas, hopes and dreams for our wee house at Eco Living's Sam Booth, who magicked them into this fabulous first design. Come December 2023, it was time to hone in on the energy and services set up for our tiny house and finalise design details, ready to lodge our application for full planning permission. So let's talk energy and services for our new home. When we first started thinking about a tiny house, we were working off an assumption that it might be off-grid, as this gave us the most amount of flexibility when it came to location. We weren't sure exactly what an off-grid setup would look like, but it would probably involve a composting toilet, rainwater harvesting, solar panels with batteries and a backup generator for electricity, LPG gas bottles for cooking and hot water, and a wood burner for heating. But it turned out that the plot we eventually ended up buying already had a septic tank on site, with mains electricity and water connections close by. Connecting to the existing septic tank made sense to us, meaning we could have a regular flushing toilet instead of a composting toilet, which would be more straightforward to use day to day, and certainly easier if we end up renting the house out while we're away travelling. Connecting to the mains water supply also made sense. For heating and hot water, there were a few options to consider. In our area and in many other parts of rural Scotland, there isn't any mains gas supply. Instead, homes often have oil heating, with a big oil tank in their garden that gets filled up by a delivery truck a few times a year. Alternatively, LPG gas bottles can be used, swapping them out whenever they're empty. But we didn't want to use oil or gas, and even if we did, these forms of heating systems are no longer permitted for new builds in Scotland as of April 1st, 2024, under the New Build Heat Standard. Whether these rules extend to buildings such as ours, being constructed to residential park home specification, without the need for a building warrant, I'm not sure. But regardless, a fossil fuel-based heating system probably wouldn't be looked upon kindly by the planning department. So, an all-electric heating and hot water system was the option we settled on, with a wood-burning stove as a backup heating source in case of power cuts. Sam at Eco suggested electric underfloor heating combined with instant water heaters for our taps and shower. But in the process of researching all the possibilities, I'd come across a pretty attractive option of grants and interest-free loans available for air source heat pumps, solar panels and batteries under the Home Energy Scotland initiative. At the time, a £9,000 grant was available for self-builders in rural areas for an air source heat pump, with an additional £7,500 interest-free loan if required. As long as we had the air source heat pump, we could also apply for grants totalling £2,500 for solar PV panels and batteries, with an extra £9,500 available in interest-free loans. This amount of funding was huge and presented the possibility of having an all-electric system powered largely by solar energy, with minimal cost to us at the build stage and for years to come. To meet the funding conditions, we'd need to be grid connected, which was a good idea for the winter months anyway. And based on phone calls with Home Energy Scotland, we were hopeful our build type would be eligible, although we wouldn't know for sure until our planning permission had been granted and we could submit the application. In Sam's opinion, an air source heat pump in a space as small as ours would be overkill, and he was probably right. But researching all the possibilities and weighing up the functionality of each, we just kept coming back to the funded heat pump and solar power option. I did so much research into how the system would work, digging into product manuals, forums, and random blogs in an attempt to estimate running costs, assess day-to-day usability, and figure out the actual components we'd need and what their dimensions would be. Because in a tiny house, size matters, and the physical feasibility of such an energy system had to be considered. An air source heat pump would provide both our heating via underfloor pipes, and our hot water. But we'd need to find space in the house to fit a tank similar in size to a fridge freezer. For the external wall-mounted unit, as well as all the batteries for the solar setup, Sam proposed a separate shed-like building. This would reduce any audible noise from the unit and save space inside the house. We didn't have enough roof space to mount the solar panels, so these would have to be ground-mounted, somewhere within our 0.4 acre plot. The additional weight and labour costs involved with a wet underfloor heating system, compared to electric underfloor heating, is considerable. And the space required for the internal tank meant we'd have to sacrifice attic storage space. But the setup was deemed possible. Sam suggested splitting the project between Echo for the design and build of the house, and a separate contractor to design and install the energy system. And we were happy to go with this approach. So in mid-December 2023, Sam reached out to a renewable energy systems specialist he'd worked with before to get an assessment of the best setup for our needs. Christmas holidays came and went, along with illness and catching up on other workloads. And before we knew it, February 2024 had rolled around, and Echo still hadn't heard much back from the energy consultant. Instead of stalling any longer, Sam suggested we just go ahead and prepare the planning application drawings, including an array of ground-mounted solar panels and a shed to house the kit. We had no way of knowing our electricity usage, but based on calculations I'd done, which could be very questionable given that maths isn't my strong point, I estimated we might use around 3,925 kilowatt hours per year, which included running an air source heat pump. Based on these figures, Sam proposed a 4 kilowatt solar system for the plans. Working off the first house design drawings that we had already given feedback on, which we talked through with you in the last video, and our decision to connect to the existing septic tank, mains water and mains electricity, and use an air source heat pump plus solar PV and battery setup, Sam set to work on revising the design and preparing the planning application drawings. We were aiming to submit our application by early April 2024, because soon after we'd be moving onto tall ship Bessie Ellen to start a filming project documenting our 120th anniversary year. We'd be living and working out of shared quarters for a few months, sailing around the UK and over to Brittany for the Brest and Douarnenez maritime festivals, and wouldn't have time or headspace to juggle anything tiny house related. So we wanted this part of the process ticked off before setting off to sea. This video is sponsored by Holy.
Del! We've still got half the length of Scotland to drive before we make it home to our dream tiny house at the paddock. You are going to need an energy boost, and I'm not talking about heat pumps and solar panels. Let's crack out the Holy squad with a side serving of fresh air. This is the starter set deluxe, the perfect place to start if, like us, you're new to Holy. So you can taste test all of their energy, hydration and iced tea flavours to find your favourites before ordering a bigger tub.
These wee sachets are super convenient on the go, and they take up minimal space at home too, and all the packaging is recyclable.
Strawberry kiwi. That is the hydration I'm in the mood for today. I love this one. Del, what's your fave?
Watermelon whale as some gargantuan refreshment.
Holy Energy contains Newcaf for a 4-hour slow release of caffeine, with no added sugar, no taurine and no aspartame. And it actually tastes good, thanks to its natural flavours. My go-to is the hydration drinks, packed with electrolytes, coconut water and minerals, which I find equally thirst-quenching and effective after a night of festive indulgence or an invigorating walk. Something I plan to make part of my daily routine starting here and now in 2026. If you're also feeling a sense of new year, new me, and could do with improving your day-to-day hydration or swapping out sugary soft drinks or conventional energy drinks for a healthier alternative, then why not give Holy a try? Right now, they're including a special New Year's version of one of these brilliant thermo shakers for free with the starter set deluxe. And you can also get £5 off your first order with our code HOGS5, or get 10% off with the code HOGS. You can choose whichever deal is best for you. Thanks to Holy for partnering with us for this video, and a big thanks to you if you place an order using our links.
as it supports this channel and keeps these videos coming.
So, what does the planning permission process involve? For many, including us, it can seem like a pretty big deal, because getting or not getting this stamp of approval can be the difference between your dream home becoming reality or vanishing into thin air, taking a load of time and money with it. One of the reasons we were keen to work with Echo for our tiny house build was that they include planning drawings and submission as part of their overall service. And we were really thankful for Sam's experience in the planning realm, and that he would be lodging the application on our behalf. As we've talked about before, when we started our Great Scottish Plot Hunt, we only considered plots that already had planning permission in principle granted. And I think it's a really good approach if you're looking to do something similar. Existing permission in principle doesn't mean that you'll be able to site just whatever house you want on the plot, but it does give you an existing framework to work with and an insight into the planning officer's considerations for the specific plot, which can be read alongside the general conditions that all Scottish planning officers will consider, as outlined in the National Planning Framework 4 document. This national framework was adopted in February 2023, and it's available to read online, enabling you to get an understanding of what factors are being considered by planning departments across the country. Planning applications are also readily available to view publicly via the relevant council website, and this is another great source for familiarising yourself with the required documents, constraints, considerations, and the planning process in general. For the paddock, the existing PIP, which was in place when we bought it, had been granted for a much larger house design than the one we were proposing. However, the shape and materials used in the construction would be very different. In order to give ourselves the best chance of our application being granted, we tried to match as much as possible of our design to the original proposed house. The planning officer's report of handling for the existing PIP gives an insight into their reasoning for granting approval, and we took cues from this. For example, positioning our tiny house within the same footprint and in the same orientation as the original house design, and having our bedroom in the same east, aka neighbour, facing position, where the planner considered any overlooking risk to be minimal. Our proposal for the access track remained the same, as per standard council regulations and the access schedule. By the start of April 2024, we had Sam's revised drawings ready for submission. The house design itself was more or less the same as the first drawings we'd seen back in November 2023. Sam had just amended the size and position of the windows and patio sliding doors in the living kitchen area, following our previous feedback. And he'd figured out a way to fit a shallow washing machine in the lobby entrance area, and a water tank above the fridge freezer in the attic storage space. The plans for the rest of the plot were no longer just a blank canvas, with a sedum-roofed shed shown to the rear of the house to store batteries and the external air source heat pump unit, along with logs, bins and anything else such as bikes. The ground-mounted solar array is also shown, along with the access track and a parking and turning area for 2 cars. Ideally, we wanted to keep the parking area as small as possible and retain as much greenery as we could in the plot. So we asked Sam to change the parking area to somewhere less obtrusive, and for the time being, we went with this design. The council provides a checklist for full planning permission, covering each of the required documents and drawings, so you can refer to this if you're looking to submit your own application, and the fees are also outlined on the council website. Sam got our application submitted via the e-planning portal a week before we were due to set sail on Bessie Ellen, and we were expecting to have a decision within 8 weeks, which would be timed perfectly with our 2 weeks shore leave. Part of the process included consultee comments from HQ Forestry, Scottish Water, and an environmental health officer, none of which presented any objections. It's also possible for members of the public to comment on any planning application, but we were confident prior to even buying our plot that we wouldn't have any objections from our neighbour, as they themselves had bought their house not long before we bought the plot, and they'd always known that a house would be built next to them. If anything, they were happy to have a much smaller house for a neighbour than the originally proposed one. An advert was also published by the council as is standard procedure. The 8 weeks came and went with no updates from the council, eventually turning into 25 weeks, or nearly 6 months until we got a response. Sam had been chasing them up regularly for weeks and eventually submitted a notice of review in regards to the failure of the appointed officer to determine the application within the period allowed. And within a week, we magically had a response and the review was withdrawn. It had taken half a year, but we were delighted that our planning permission had been granted. What we were not delighted about was the discovery that the Scottish Government seemed to have pulled the renewable energy funding for self-builders as of 1st of August 2024. And the delay in our planning application decision meant we were no longer eligible to apply. This was a massive disappointment, and it would negatively impact our energy bills for the next decade and more. Information on the Scottish Government website and on the Home Energy Scotland funding portal still made reference to funding being available for self-builders though. So seeking a definitive answer, I called Home Energy Scotland to check.
Welcome to Home Energy Scotland.
Oh, hi there. So I'm calling to check about what loans or grants might be available for renewable energy systems for self-build, which I know that earlier in the year I could find information about that on your site. It seemed to disappear, but I am still finding information about self-builds on the Scottish Government website and also on Home Energy Scotland's funding portal. Can you just clarify what the situation is?
And confirmed there's definitely no funding for self-build. Not sure if the Scottish Government website is out of date or not. So there's no funding for self-build. So that kind of,
Nothing whatsoever for putting in a renewable system. Okay.
There's definitely no funding just now. I thought that was the case, and it sounds a bit strange to say, I think the Scottish Government website's wrong, but it is. There's no funding for self-build. But yeah, if you keep an eye on our website and maybe give us a call back, maybe in the financial year, or just check around the financial year to see if there's more funding to put into it. But there's definitely none at the moment.
I know, but the problem is when you're building something, you're then. The choice is to either we sit and wait until spring and not do anything in the hope that something might come in, or we build it and we need to put in some other energy system, and then it comes in and suddenly, you need to put in underfloor heating with your heat pump, but you've already put all your flooring down and built your whole house. So,
I appreciate
it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I know. I appreciate that, but there's nothing. I'm not privy to any information. We're told. As and when.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, no problem.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks, bye.
I'm not convinced that the Scottish Government's own website and the funding portal website would be not updated. What was that? August, September, October, 3 months after changing a policy. That they've just forgotten to do it. And then it's like you just can't get any answers.
Well, we did get an answer there. So I can perfectly believe that their website's not been updated for 3 months because maybe there's just nobody on that, nobody's updating it. So that really doesn't surprise me. And I think she gave us a pretty definitive answer there. Like, Home Energy Scotland are the ones who are in charge of this, and she just spoke to her superior and said categorically that there's no funding for self-builds, and they are unable to say if or when that will come back.
Trying everything I could just in case, I called the Scottish Government too. Who knew that was even a thing?
So I'm going to attempt to phone the Scottish Government. I've found a phone number online for the Directorate for Energy and Climate Change Business Management Unit. Might be an absolute fail, but let's try.
Good morning, Scottish Government. How can I help you?
Oh, hi there. I was trying to find out if there are any renewable energy grants or loans available for self-builders. On the Scottish Government website, under the Renewable and Low Carbon Energy Department, there is information saying that there is. However, the Home Energy Scotland team say that there isn't. So I'm looking for some clarification.
I would need to give you an email address for you to email your inquiry into the Scottish Government. Have you got a pen and paper handy?
Is it the central...
If you send it, it's contact us at gov.scot.
I have emailed a few months ago and never heard anything back. Is it the CEU at gov.scot?
No, that's an old address. It's contact us at gov.scot.
Contact us at gov.
At gov.scot.
Do you have any idea how long it takes to get a reply?
Any correspondence that comes into the government has got a 20 working day turnaround, but it really just depends on, the topic and how much information they have to sort of pull together to reply.
Okay. Have you got any idea if information on the Scottish Government website addresses is always kept up to date, or is there a chance it could have been not updated in the last 3 months?
Unfortunately, I don't know
Okay.
the ins and outs of the website.
Okay.
Nothing that I take any dealings with, I'm afraid. Sorry about that. So I couldn't give you a clarification on that at all.
Okay,
Sorry.
no problem. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. Bye.
Bye. Okay. I did think it was a bit odd that they would give you a phone number straight through to the relevant department. Okay. I guess I will email, but I don't imagine we'll get much of a response, and we certainly won't get one in time for us to basically finalise everything we need to finalise for the build.
I did email, referencing the conflicting information across 3 sites, including the government's own website, asking for definitive clarification whether an exception would be made for us to apply given the 4-month overdue decision from the council. And lastly, if they could confirm whether or not any funding for self-builders might be available in the near future. And someone from the Loans and Grants Delivery team did actually reply a month later, confirming that there is definitely no funding for self-builders, and that there is no plan to reinstate funding for self-builders, and that, surprise, surprise, no, they wouldn't make an exception and accept an application from us just because the council took an extra 4 months to respond. They did also thank me for alerting them to the outdated info on the websites, although I noticed the ScotGov website still hasn't had the self-builders bit removed over a year later. Instead of providing funding to self-builders, the government introduced the New Build Heat Standard, banning oil and gas boilers from all new build homes, which in our opinion is certainly a good thing. But we couldn't help being disappointed to have missed out on the funding for an air source heat pump, solar panel and battery setup. The grants and loans scheme is still running for upgrades to clean heating systems and energy efficiency improvements for existing homes, by the way. Check the Funding Finder section on the Home Energy Scotland website to see what is available and the eligibility requirements. If you're a homeowner in Scotland, this might be something you can apply for. As for us, the heat pump, solar, battery dream was over, as without the funding we couldn't afford to install such a system, and we had to revisit the options for our energy setup once again. Heating was straightforward. We'd stick with the log stove and go with electric underfloor heating as Sam had first suggested. But our hot water options required a little more research. Ideally, we wanted to have 24/7 hot water and a guaranteed good shower with a high flow rate. The air source heat pump would have given us both of these things, but now we'd have to make a compromise somewhere. Sam suggested instant water heaters for each tap, because these fit neatly into small spaces and would provide 24/7 hot water on demand. They work by drawing in cold water and passing it through a heating element to provide hot water whenever you turn on the tap or shower. But our own experiences with instant electric showers have always left us feeling like they're just a bit rubbish. The more research I did into them, the more I understood why. Because even with the most powerful of instant electric shower models, it seems that you'd never get a flow rate more than 6 litres a minute, which reduces down to about 3 litres a minute or less in colder weather, when the required increase in water temperature is greater and the system has to work harder to give you a hot shower. For reference, a good flow rate is considered to be 11 litres a minute. Also, with instant electric water heaters, it seems if you run more than one tap at a time, it decreases the flow rate and temperature of both. So, if we wanted a guaranteed good shower, powered by electricity, the only option we could see would be an immersion tank. I had memories of one of these from our hall cupboard when I was a kid. It was always the hottest place in the house, and we drape our wet towels on it to dry. I had no idea how it worked though, so deep dive research continued. Essentially, an immersion tank is like a giant kettle, and instead of heating cold water instantly, this system heats up the full tank of, say, 180 litres of water to, say, 60 degrees. And your shower and taps then draw hot water from the tank at a flow rate of at least 11 litres a minute, often more. So this system would give us a good shower. But to provide us with 24/7 hot water, we'd need to keep it switched on all the time. And this could end up getting pretty expensive. Bear in mind that the unit cost of electricity is more than 4 times that of mains gas. To run an immersion tank as economically as possible, you really want to plan in advance when you'll want hot water. Switch it on and wait an hour or so while the tank heats up. Ideally only doing this once a day. Whatever way you look at it, this just isn't as convenient as having hot water on demand anytime you like. But weighing up the options, we decided on an immersion tank. It may well end up a more expensive option to run compared to instant water heaters, but a guaranteed good shower experience was really a non-negotiable for us. We didn't want to build our dream home complete with dreamy bathroom with a full height shower window, only to end up with a piddly flow and a winter full of pathetic, dreaded showers. When we're settled in one place, we tend to fall into a routine quite quickly, and figured that switching on and off the tank daily could just become a habit quite easily. Also, the space for a 180 litre water tank had already been factored into the design of the house as part of the air source heat pump system, so housing the hardware wasn't a problem. So, the decision on our energy setup was at last made, with the plan being to connect to mains electricity and install electric underfloor heating and a hot water immersion tank, with an induction hob for cooking and a wood-burning stove as a secondary backup heating source. What do you think about this setup? Have you got feedback on any of the options we considered? Share your experiences in the comments, and let's get this small homes energy options conversation started. By the time our planning permission came through in October 2024, it had been about 1.5 years since Del and I started our tiny house journey. And at last, things were about to get very real. Subscribe to the channel to continue following our story. Until next time, cheerio from us, the hogs in the paddock.